There's something about the sound of a volleyball hitting sand that feels like punctuation, sharp, satisfying, final. A slap of air, a thump of earth, a moment caught between motion and stillness. That's what I chase when I step out onto the beach 3 evenings a week, barefoot and flushed, pretending that I'm just there for the workout. But I'm not. At 37, I tell myself I still belong here, running with the girls in tank tops and sun-kissed legs, laughing at missed serves and celebrating every spike like it's the first. It's the one place I don't feel invisible. At home, it's different. My husband, Martin, is 20 years older than me. When we married, the age gap felt like an adventure. He was wise, stable, settled. I was 27, charmed by his calm presence, his intellectual wit, his elegant disdain for small talk. But time has a way of shifting the balance. 10 years later, that quiet calm has turned into a kind of stillness I can't seem to shake loose. He doesn't come to the beach anymore. He doesn't ask about the games. He barely lifts his eyes from his chess app when I walk in, skin still warm from the sunset and legs sore from sprinting across the sand. "Good game?" he'll ask, eyes still on the screen. "Yeah," I answer, and we leave it at that. But last week, something changed. My son, Noah, turned 18 in March. Tall, all limbs and lean muscle, with the kind of effortless grace that comes from youth and just enough awkwardness to remind me he's still my boy. Except he's not. Not really. He's a man now. It startles me sometimes how much he looks like Martin did in the old photos, before the gray, before the silence. Only Noah smiles more. And when he does, it reaches his eyes. He came to the beach last Wednesday. Said he wanted to see what all the fuss was about. I laughed and waved him off, thinking he'd sit on the bleachers with a water bottle and his headphones, tapping away at his phone. But he didn't. He watched. Really watched. When I looked up between serves, his eyes were already on me. Steadier than I expected. Not in judgment, not in critique. Just noticing. Later that night, after I had showered and twisted my damp hair up in a towel, I found him in the kitchen. Shirtless, in gray sweatpants, drinking milk from the carton like he had when he was 10. "You were good out there," he said, his voice low, almost casual. "Thanks," I replied, pulling open the fridge, pretending I wasn't startled by how deep his voice had gotten over the past year. "You still play like you're 20, he added with a half-smile. "Yeah, well, my knees would disagree." He laughed, but then there was a pause. A moment that stretched longer than it should have. When I turned, he was still looking at me, not like a son, not exactly. Just quiet. Curious. Like he was searching for something in my face. I broke the gaze first. Said something about laundry. Left the room too fast. That night, I lay in bed next to Martin. His back to me, as always, one hand resting on the pillow like a placeholder. I closed my eyes and tried to focus on the rhythm of his breath, the familiar creak of the fan above us. But all I could think of was Noah's voice. The way it had settled in the room like a slow burn. The next morning, he joined me for coffee. No phone, no headphones. Just him, tall and sleepy-eyed, reaching for the mugs like he belonged in that quiet kitchen light. "Beach again today?" he asked. I nodded. "You coming?" He didn't answer right away. Just sipped his coffee, watching me over the rim of the cup. "I might," he said finally, setting it down. "It was nice watching you." I felt the breath catch in my throat. And suddenly I wasn't thinking about volleyball. It's strange, the things we start to care about when someone sees us. Really sees us. For years, my trips to the beach had been simple. Functional. My old black sports bra, the quick-dry shorts that had lost their shape in the wash, my hair pulled into a messy bun without a second thought. I want to sweat. To escape. To feel strong. But after that morning, after Noah sat across from me at the kitchen table, his eyes lingering on mine longer than I could pretend was innocent, I found myself standing in front of the mirror with a different intention. It wasn't about being the best player out there anymore. It was about being seen. By him. I can hardly admit that to myself, even now. That afternoon, I opened my dresser and pulled out swimsuits I hadn't worn in years. Pieces I used to wear before I was a wife, before I was a mother, back when men would stop me on the street just to smile. back when I knew exactly what turned heads. I ran my fingers over a deep red bikini I'd forgotten I even owned. Would it be too much? I bit my lip, holding it up against my body in the mirror. My curves were still there, maybe softer, maybe fuller, but they were mine. I had worked for them in every game, every sprint, every hour I stayed after practice when everyone else packed up and left. And then I caught myself smiling. Not a proud smile. Not even a confident one. No, this was something else. A secret smile. A woman's smile. I laid the bikini on the bed and carefully chose a white beach dress to go over it. Light, almost see-through in the sun, with thin straps that left my shoulders bare. My skin was still sun-kissed from the last game, golden along the collarbone, the tops of my thighs. I heard movement down the hall.
Noah.
I didn't want him to see me dressing like this, not yet. Not until I was walking down to the beach, where it would feel like an accident. Like this was just how I always looked. But my pulse quickened all the same. By the time I heard him rustling in the kitchen again, I was slipping into my sandals, carefully tying the straps higher up my calves than necessary, like the girls I used to envy in the magazines. I caught my reflection in the mirror. And for the first time in years, I didn't look like someone's wife. I didn't even look like someone's mother. I looked like me.
Alive.
When I stepped out into the kitchen, the sunlight pouring through the window caught the hem of my dress, turning it almost translucent. I knew it. I could feel the warm air on my legs, the bare skin of my shoulders glowing. He was at the counter, pouring himself water.
But he stopped.
The glass paused halfway to his lips. His eyes, unmistakably, without hesitation, swept over me.
Slow. Not shy.
Not hurried. And for the briefest of moments, I didn't move. I let him look. Let him take it in. Let him wonder. New dress? He asked, his voice low, casual, but not as casual as he wanted it to sound. Old one. I replied, my voice soft. Just felt like wearing it today. I walked past him, the smell of sunscreen and salt already on my skin. His eyes followed me. I didn't need to turn around to know. I felt it like the sun on my back. That night before bed, I sat for a long time in front of the mirror. I should have felt guilty. Should have felt like I was playing with something dangerous. But all I felt was alive. More alive than I had in years. Tomorrow, we'd go to the beach again. Tomorrow, I'd let him watch. And deep down, I knew I wanted him to. The next morning felt different from the very first moment. I woke up before my alarm. Rare for me on a weekend. My body already buzzing with a nervous energy I hadn't felt since I was a girl getting ready for a first date. But this wasn't a date. This was just volleyball. I kept telling myself that. And yet, when I stood under the stream of warm water in the shower, lathering the coconut-scented soap over my skin, I found myself slowing down.
Taking care.
Smoothing my legs more carefully than usual. Running oil along my shoulders and arms until they gleamed. It wasn't for the women at the beach. It wasn't even for me. I dried my hair loosely, letting it fall in soft waves down my back, and pulled that red bikini from the drawer like it was some forbidden artifact. When I stepped into the kitchen, Noah was already dressed, loose board shorts, no shirt, his sun-kissed chest and shoulders broad, stronger than I let myself notice most days. His hair was still damp from a shower. For a moment, he didn't see me. He was scrolling on his phone, leaning one hip lazily against the counter. But when I cleared my throat, when I walked fully into the light, he looked up. And the change in him was almost imperceptible. Almost. His hand stilled on the screen. His eyes moved, not in a hurried, embarrassed way, but in a slow, quiet sweep that left goosebumps trailing up my arms. That heat from yesterday was back. But today it sat thicker between us. You ready? I asked lightly, pretending not to notice. But his voice came slower than usual. Yeah, his gaze lingered another second too long. You look really good today, Mom. That word, Mom, should have grounded me. Should have reminded me of who I was. But instead, it sounded like an afterthought. An apology. Or maybe a reminder for himself. Thank you, I said, softer than I meant. We didn't speak much on the drive down to the beach. But the air was full of everything we weren't saying. Every time his hand rested on the gear shift near my knee, every glance sideways at a stoplight, every silent breath that felt too loud in the small space of the car. I felt it. He felt it. When we arrived, the sun was already high, casting that perfect late spring glow across the sand. The court was waiting, nets strung tight, the soft sounds of waves behind us like music. But before I could head to the others warming up, I felt him catch my wrist. Barely a touch, barely there, but enough to stop me. "Wait," he said, his voice quiet, almost uncertain. I turned, heart already racing. "What is it?" He hesitated, like the words were there, caught in the back of his throat. Finally, he shook his head, that crooked half-smile returning. "Nothing. Just, I'm glad I came today." I felt the corners of my lips lift, an answering smile I couldn't stop. Me too. I played that day like I hadn't in years. Every movement, every leap, every quick pivot across the sand, I could feel his eyes. I wasn't imagining it. I could feel him watching me, not just as a player, not just as a mother, as a woman. And every glance I stole between points, every casual look toward where he sat on the bleachers, elbows resting on his knees, eyes never leaving me, sent a heat curling low in my stomach. It was intoxicating. It was dangerous. And it was real. That night, after we returned home, sun-drunk, salt still on our skin, I stood in the bathroom longer than necessary, staring at my reflection. My cheeks were flushed from the sun. But I knew that wasn't the only reason. Something had shifted. I didn't know where this would lead. I didn't know if it would stop. But tonight, when I closed my eyes, I would remember the way he watched me. And I would want him to watch me again. The house was quiet that night.
Too quiet.
After dinner, Martin had retreated to his study, as he always did. Same worn chair, same news broadcasts humming low in the background. We'd stopped sharing our evenings long ago. Two ghosts passing one another in the hallway, both still in the same house but no longer in the same life. Noah and I, though, were still lit from the beach. Sun-kissed and sand-dusted, the salt of the ocean still in our hair. He'd showered first, and I could smell his skin even from the couch. Clean, warm, still tinged with something boyish beneath the musk of whatever cologne he wore now. Not the cheap spray he used in high school. No, this one was heavier, mature, unmistakable. I sat in my favorite spot by the window, a throw blanket pulled over my legs, my damp hair falling across one shoulder. The television was on, but I wasn't watching. I was just waiting for what I wasn't sure, until I heard his footsteps. "Hey," he said softly, as he came into the living room. His voice always sounded deeper at night. "You still up?" I looked up at him and smiled gently. Couldn't sleep. He padded over barefoot, wearing loose shorts and a fitted t-shirt that hugged the shape of his chest in a way I tried not to notice.
Tried.
"You want me to keep you company?" he asked, with a soft tilt of his head. "Of course," I said, scooting over, offering him room beside me. "I like having you here." He sat down, his knee brushing against mine beneath the blanket, and I didn't move away. We watched in silence for a few minutes, some random late-night show neither of us was really following. My heart beat a little faster, but everything on the surface remained still.
Calm.
Then I felt it. His arm draped across the back of the couch. Slowly. Thoughtfully. Not possessive, just present. And when I shifted slightly to adjust the blanket, his fingers brushed my shoulder. "You were amazing today," he murmured, his voice low and earnest. "On the court. I couldn't take my eyes off you." My lips parted, but I couldn't speak. "I mean it," he continued, and now his hand settled lightly on the curve of my arm. "You move like you're not bound by anything, like you haven't aged at all." I turned to him slowly. His eyes were steady on mine, not teasing or playful.
Honest.
"You don't look 37, he added, and I felt my breath catch. "You look glowing." The compliment, so direct and full, made something flicker in my chest. I laughed, but it sounded shaky in my own ears. "Careful," I said, trying to sound light. "You're going to make your mother blush." He didn't laugh. Instead, his gaze lingered, softer now. That's not why I said it. And then, without a word, he wrapped his arm around my shoulders and pulled me gently toward him.
I didn't resist.
I leaned into him like it was the most natural thing in the world, my head resting just beneath his chin, the warmth of his body surrounding mine. His fingers grazed my upper arm, tracing quiet circles against my skin. It should have felt strange. It should have felt wrong. But it didn't. It felt grounding, safe, stirring. You've always been beautiful, he whispered near my ear. But lately, I see you differently. I closed my eyes. I didn't ask what he meant, because I already knew, and a part of me, one that had been quiet for too long, ached to be seen the way he was seeing me now. You make me feel young again, I said softly, after a long silence. Like I'm not fading away into the background. His hold on me tightened ever so slightly. You're not fading, Mom, he said. You're waking up. I felt it too. Waking up. To something dangerous. Something tender. Something that couldn't be taken back, once acknowledged. But I didn't move. And neither did he. We stayed like that until the television clicked off by itself and the room was filled with nothing but the soft sounds of our breathing and the tension between us that neither of us dared name. Yet. The morning after felt like a dream I hadn't woken up from. I moved through the kitchen slowly, unsure of what to do with the memory of his arm around me, the way we had sat in silence, his breath stirring the strands of my hair, the quiet beat of his heart beneath my cheek. Nothing had been said. Nothing needed to be. But everything had changed. The sun was just beginning to warm the tile beneath my feet as I stood by the stove, stirring eggs out of habit. My thoughts were far away, back in that still moment on the couch when the world had stopped and something forbidden had awakened. I heard his footsteps before I saw him. He always walked with that soft confidence, like he never questioned where he belonged. Morning, he said, his voice still rough with sleep. I turned, half expecting guilt to show on his face. But there was none. Only warmth. Morning, I replied, tucking a strand of hair behind my ear. I felt suddenly aware of everything. The way my robe clung to my waist, the exposed length of my legs, the soft sound of the eggs sizzling between us. He walked over to the counter, reached for 2 mugs, and poured the coffee like he always did. The domestic rhythm felt normal, familiar. But when he handed me my cup, his fingers brushed mine. And this time, neither of us looked away. I slept well, he said, a touch quieter. Me too, I lied. He leaned against the counter beside me, sipping slowly. The silence between us wasn't awkward. It was charged, delicate, like one breath too deep might tip us into something we couldn't undo. I looked over at him, and his eyes were already on me. You seem quiet today, I said gently. So do you. He set his cup down and turned slightly, his hip pressing against the edge of the counter. His gaze fell to my bare shoulder, then returned to my eyes. I keep thinking about last night, he said. My breath caught. Me too. His voice lowered. It didn't feel wrong. No, I whispered. It didn't. We stood like that, the seconds stretching between us. Neither of us moved. But we were both leaning towards something, teetering just on the edge of it. He reached out then, slow, deliberate, and tucked a strand of hair behind my ear. His fingers lingered against my cheek, and I leaned into the warmth of his palm without thinking. I don't want to pretend anymore, he murmured, barely louder than the hum of the fridge. I searched his face, looking for hesitation. There was none. He stepped closer. So close I could feel the heat of him, could see the golden flecks in his eyes that I'd missed when he was younger. Then he whispered, "May I?" My heart pounded so loud I was sure he could hear it. But I nodded. And then, gently, slowly, he kissed me. Soft at first.
Questioning.
But when I didn't pull away, when I leaned into it instead, it deepened. His hand moved to my waist, mine to his chest, and the warmth that passed between us was like fire licking through my veins. It wasn't hurried. It wasn't clumsy. It was everything I hadn't let myself feel in years, seen, desired, wanted not because I was needed, but because I was me. When we finally pulled apart, our foreheads rested together. His hand still cupped the side of my face, and my lips still tingled from the kiss. I didn't speak. Neither did he. There were no words for what had just passed between us, no labels, no names that could make sense of it. Just the sound of our breath in the kitchen morning light, and the knowledge that we had crossed a line. Together.